Hey Wid fam, this is Leo with One Happy Widow. Today I'm just going to talk about a shortened version of how I became widowed and kind of how I went from there to here. So, if you've been watching me for a long time, then you probably already know most of the story, if not all. I also made a very detailed 2 video series about Dewey's illness, his cancer journey, and what led up to his death, and then all the aftermath of it. And so it ended up being 2 really long videos, and so they've been up for quite a while. I can link them up here. I will also link them in the description below if you want to watch to get all the details. But I'm going to try to make an abridged version of it so that those of you who are new to the channel, don't know a lot about me, or just kind of want to hear the shortened version without having to go through all the crying details, then this might be like a little bit more of an abridged version. So last video, I talked about where you might be, how you might have come across this channel, how you might have found me, and I kind of did a lot of guessing on where you might be, and I think I probably hit on at least one thing, if not several, of feelings and thoughts that you might have gone through in your journey to becoming a widow or a widower. For the most part, our grief journey does have a lot of similarities. Mine, yours, and the majority of the widows and widowers that find their way to this channel, to our Facebook group. And so that's kind of what brings us together, is this common journey. Grief is a human feeling. And so even though we express it a lot in different ways, and we interpret it in different ways, and we process it in different ways, there are a lot of similarities in this grief journey when you lose a spouse. And so kind of is one thing that sort of brings us all together and makes us feel like we're not alone on this journey, and that we're not going through it by ourselves. So today I'm just going to talk about a quick overview of how I became widowed and how that anticipatory grief kind of falls in with my grief journey and how it began. So, usually when you become widowed, it's one of 2 ways. Either you knew it was coming, either you knew that your spouse was sick and not healthy, and you kind of were waiting for that time, that you weren't really sure when it was going to come, but you kind of knew that the end might be near at some point, and you were sort of waiting around for something like that to happen, not hoping for it, but just you kind of knew that at any given point your spouse might have a heart attack, or they might have been dealing with diabetes or things like that. Then there's another way that you might have actually known it was coming. This was my case. So in the situation of a terminal illness where you've been diagnosed, you have a little bit of an idea of the time frame. And the biggest difference between those two is some people's terminal diagnosis is possibly terminal, but hopeful that there might be a remission or a cure. And then there's others that is terminal, and you're not really hoping for, a cure or a remission. You're just hoping for as little pain as possible and as much quality time as you can get with your loved one as possible. So that's kind of how my situation was. And then there's on the completely other side of that is a death that comes as a complete surprise, whether it's an accident, or something, just out of the blue, not expected, not an illness, something that just hit really quickly and stopped you in your tracks. You had no reason to believe that anything like that was coming, and you sort of got blindsided by it. So those are kind of the most common ways to become widowed. So in my situation, it was Valentine's Day, 2017. And so my husband had um, really bad stomach pain, and so he ended up going to the ER. They did a few preliminary tests. They brought in an oncologist, and they basically told him, they probably knew at that point and didn't really want to tell him. They probably saw some signs and suspected, that it was cancer. And he was 42 at the time in relatively good health. He did have diabetes and a few other issues, but he didn't smoke. He didn't really drink a whole lot. He was a little overweight, but he wasn't obese. He had been in the military, so he was in pretty good shape, and he was relatively young. So they did tell him to go, as soon as possible to make an appointment for to see an oncologist. And so he did that. And when he went to go see the oncologist and they did the test, they found that he had bile duct cancer, which is a very rare and aggressive form of cancer. By the time they did find it, it had already spread to his liver and his lymph nodes, and it was already stage 4. And so at that point, we went to the doctor. The doctor said that he was young and, he could probably withstand some pretty aggressive chemotherapy, but the chemotherapy was never meant to put him into remission. It was simply to give him the best quality of life for the longest amount of time as possible. And the fact that he was such a strong young man, they felt like that he would be able to withstand the chemo for a long time. And they gave him just under a year of a survival rate. So, we had some hope that we would get some time together, but we pretty much knew even at diagnosis that there wasn't going to be any more time besides just the illness. And so at that point, we started to have to try to adjust to this news and to figure out how to tell the kids and to figure out what to do from there and to put some things in place. Our biggest focus was just trying to spend as much quality time together as we could with the kids. We took one last family trip and we said all the things that we needed to say, and then we just kind of buckled down and tried to deal with what we were handling. My husband got baptized about 2 weeks before he passed away. He was saved and he knew where he was going after he died, and so he had his Bible with him the whole time that he was in the hospital and in hospice, and he did a lot of reading and a lot of highlighting and a lot of dog earing, and he just kind of spent time thinking about his life and doing a lot of contemplating. And then he got sick pretty quick. So from the time he got diagnosed in February, he actually only lived 4 months after that. He only had 3 or 4 chemo treatments, not very many, because the chemo was very aggressive, and it just really took him down and made him really, really sick and weak. And he had a lot of pain. And so after a few chemo treatments, he just decided he would rather not prolong his life in the amount of pain that he was in. And so he opted out of doing a lot more chemo. And then once he stopped the chemo, he went down pretty quickly. So from his diagnosis in February, he passed away in June. So he had 4 months with us. And he actually died 1 week after our 17th wedding anniversary and 1 day before Father's Day. So he died on a Saturday, and Father's Day was that next day on Sunday. So, it was quick. It was 4 months from the time you find out you're sick until the time that you die. That's not a lot of time. It wasn't a lot of time for us to, try to process everything and figure out what was going on. My husband's mom was in the picture. She stayed with us for most of the time so that I could continue to work. And keep the bills paid, and she kind of helped out with the kids and helped out with Dewey, and try to get him to his chemo appointments and things like that. So we just kind of tried to do the best that we could do. This is where anticipatory grief set in. At the time, I did not know anything about that. I didn't know what it was called. I didn't know there was such a thing. I just know that I was walking around feeling like a zombie in a fog, sort of thinking that I was in a bad dream and waiting to wake up. And it was really hard to try to milk the most quality time that I could have with him, and at the same time not be constantly thinking about the fact that he was dying and that we weren't going to get a whole lot of time, much more time left with me, with the kids. And the more that time went by meant the less time we had left. And in addition to that, each day that passed, he got sicker and sicker and weaker and in more pain. And so, The last 2 months, was really rough. And then that last month, it was just pain management, pain management, pain management. And that was pretty much it. There wasn't a lot of quality time spent together as far as like conversations and, doing anything. It was caregiving and it was pain management, which wasn't managed very well. His medicine just did not seem to hit the pain. And so it was in-house hospice, and then it was hospice in a hospice facility. He was, I think, there for about 10 days, and then he passed away with his mom there. And then we joined him a little bit later, and then he ended up being buried in the military cemetery with his brothers in arms, which is where he wanted to be. So if you want to go back and watch all the detailed videos, of how everything led up to that point, you can. There's a lot of details that I shared that I won't share in this one for lack of time, but also, I put my story out there, and I know that me putting the details out there also leaves me open to scrutiny and to judgment from others about the decisions that I made, some of the things that I said, some of the things that I did, in that process. And a lot of people have made some comments underneath the videos about how I must not have loved him very much because I didn't really seem to have a lot of compassion for him in the beginning about when he was in pain. And I didn't know he had cancer. I didn't know he was dying when he went to the ER that night. I thought he had indigestion because he had indigestion a lot. And he complained a lot about his stomach hurting a lot. And most of the time it was gas. And most of the time it was indigestion, and in the past he had had gallstones, but he had his gallbladder removed. And so, I did not take him very seriously when he was sick that night. Because as I said, he was 42. I didn't assume that he was dying of cancer when he had a stomach ache in the middle of the night on a work night. So I don't say all these things to defend myself because I'm not trying to defend what I did or said or didn't do and the mistakes that I made. Do I have regrets on some decisions that I made? Yeah, I do. Um, would I have done it differently if I had known what I know now? Of course I would. But I was going on the information that I had at the time. And even after I knew that he was sick and that he was dying, there was some things that happened at the very end of his life that between me and his mom. And, people have heard my story and understood what I was going through at that time and saw it from my perspective. Other people have seen it from his mom's perspective, the fact that she was losing her only child and some of the things that she said and did. We both have our own version of the story, and we both have our reasons for doing and saying the things that we did. And so, did I make some mistakes at that point? Yeah. Did she? Probably so. But, a lot of the people who have said, yeah, I understand what you've been through or kind of sympathize with my side have said, those are the people who are widowed mostly. The people who have called me heartless and soulless and, all the different names, a lot of those people are not widowed and maybe don't understand what it's like to go through when you're going through. Even when I was in the middle of going through it all and I was grieving or pre-grieving or trying to get a handle on things, a lot of the things that I did probably seemed distant or heartless or unsympathetic. And all I can say about those things is that they probably did seem that way at the time, maybe even seem that way now, that I look back on it. But the only thing I can say about it is that you don't know how to do it right. You don't know what the hell you're doing when your spouse is dying and you're trying to find a way to live every day. And it's real easy for non-widowed people or people who haven't gone through this anticipatory grief to say, I can't believe you didn't sit by his bedside every single day and spend every single waking moment with him by his side and not leave. And I can't believe you didn't bring the kids around and spend more time with their dad when he was sick. And I totally get how people can think that way and feel that way. I totally get it. Because if you're looking from the outside in, it's easy to say, why didn't you do this? And why didn't you do that? But when you're living it, you know, it's a lot of days, the time, when you look back, the time passes quickly, but when you're in the middle of it, the time is just ticking by. And from one day to the next, you don't know what to expect. You don't know what you're doing, and you don't know how to act. You don't know when to break down and when to stand up and try to be strong for your kids and for your spouse and for yourself. I'm sure that a lot of it was denial on my side. It was hard for me to accept the fact that my husband was dying and that I was about to be raising kids by myself, and my kids were about to be without their dad for the rest of their lives. That's a hard, hard fact to accept at that moment. And so there was probably some times that I acted like it didn't bother me as much because I was going on autopilot. I was in denial, not wanting to face it, not wanting to deal with it, not wanting to handle it. And also, I had a job to do. I still had to parent my kids. My kids were all from the ages of 7 up to the ages of 19, all of them living at home still and in school. And they had to be fed, and they had to be taken to school, and they had to be cared for. And they were losing their dad and did not know what was going on with them, and not knowing what kind of time frame we were on. And so, when you're going through that, there's probably was a lot of times when I seemed like I was unsympathetic, or I seemed like I didn't care, or I seemed like I wasn't grieving enough. And then on the other side, I felt guilty because I thought, why am I not breaking down more? Why am I not like a puddled mess on the, on my bed laying down, not able to get up and function? And it's because he couldn't function. And I needed him to know that I could take care of things. Not only right then when he was sick, because I didn't want him to worry that I was falling apart and couldn't take care of things while he was sick and seeing what was going on around him, but I also wanted him to have the confidence to know that when he was gone, that I would be able to take care of things and he didn't have to worry, that I was going to fall apart and not be able to handle stuff when he wasn't there. And so I was trying to put on a brave face, and just let him know I got this. But at the same time, you know, it's just hard to figure out what kind of emotion that you need to show, what kind of emotion that you need to rein in, how much you need to let go, how much you need to hold on to. There's no handbook for, going being the caregiver for your terminally ill husband and being a mom at the same time. And so, like I said, I'm not trying to like make excuses, and I'm not trying to defend what I did and what I said, because like I said, nobody's perfect, and I'm sure I did not do it right. I don't know what right way there is. Like, I don't know. I did things that you can probably watch those videos and think, wow, I never would have done that. You're probably right. But you know what? Until you do, you really just don't know. It is so easy to judge somebody else's life and to, make assumptions for what they should have done and didn't do, and be incredulous on like, how can she have said and done that? But, you know, I don't know. I don't know what else to tell you except for that I was surviving the best I could from day to day. And that's all I could do. And then when he died, I felt like I was just going to fall apart, but I didn't. And, I talked about that in the video too, about how I just felt relief. My first initial feeling when he died was relief, not relief for myself, but relief that he was no longer in pain and he wasn't suffering anymore. And my second feeling immediately after that was guilt, because I was guilty that I felt relieved that he had died. And so there's so many mixes of emotions at the same time that you're feeling. You don't know which one to attend to at that moment. You don't know which one is going to take the forefront and which one's going to take the back seat. You don't know which one to allow to yourself to feel, because you got so many different emotions, and you're trying to be strong for your kids, and you're trying to take care of all these things that it's hard to know what to do or how to feel or how to react. And so I know that I was in a fog for several days after he died, into the funeral. So, like I said, I look back at that time and I it hurts, to see all of the comments that people make about how you must be heartless and how you didn't care about him and how could you, evil, disgusting woman. And I think about people who say those things, and I think, how could you say those things? And then on the other hand, I think, well, you're just, you don't know me, and you're saying what you think and you're putting it out there on YouTube. And if I didn't want to, you know, leave myself open to that criticism, then I should just not put it out there at all. But, then I look back and I just have to give myself grace. I just have to forgive myself and just know that nothing that I did was with malice. I did not do anything to hurt anyone. I did not do anything for my own selfish gain. What could I have gained by losing my husband? Like, what could I have possibly done selfishly, to while I was trying to raise my kids with a dying husband? How can you be selfish in that time? Like, you're losing your love, and you're facing, some of the worst moments of your life that's coming up. I don't even know how you could be selfish at a time like that, because you don't even have time to think about yourself. You don't even know what to think, how to act, what to do. And so, when I look back and I see the things that I did and some of the things that I said, I do, if I had known, yeah, I would have done some things differently. But if I could go back and do it all again with the exact same information that I had, I probably would have acted the same exact way, because I didn't know anything else to do. So, anyway, yeah, I don't get my feelings hurt as much anymore, when I read the comments about it, because I know myself, and it's not my job to prove to everybody, or to change anybody's mind about how I handled things, because I just did what I did. And I mean, that's all I could do. And I can't go back and change it. So I could beat myself up about it. And, I do have some regrets, but since I can't go back and change it, then all I can do is just, tell you what I went through and share those moments with you, and just know that if you've gone through it too, or if you're going through it too, that maybe you can look at my mistakes, and then not feel so bad about making your own, or not feel so bad about the fact that you don't know what the hell you're doing. And that's okay too. You're not supposed to know what you're doing, you're just doing it. You just have to go through it and do it. And so anyway, that's how I became widowed. Was back in 2017, my husband got cancer, and he got sick and he died. And then we had to figure out how to live our lives without him. And it's still hard. It's still just as hard. It doesn't ever get easier. You just learn how to live with it a little. You learn better how to live with it. You get stronger. You get, you learn different ways of coping, and you learn different ways of handling it. And you learn to look ahead, and you learn to look back, and you learn to try to balance out, how to look back with fondness and try not to have too many regrets, and how to look forward without being too sad about the fact that you're moving forward without your loved one. It's a tough balance. It's a balancing act that's really, you're constantly having to correct one way or the other. But it's just what you do. And so if you're going through that, or if you've been through that, I'm sure you can relate to some of those feelings. Nobody knows how to be a widow the right way. There's no right way to do it. Like I said, there's no handbook, and even if there was, it'd be different for every single person. And so nobody can, there's not a class you can take on how to do it. You just have to figure out what works best for you. And some things work for some people, and some other things work for others. And so all we can do is just support each other in this journey, and give each other grace, and just understand that we're doing the best we can. We're going to fall short a lot of the times, because it's a real heavy burden to carry. And it's hard to do that on top of trying to live your life, along with everything else. Life's tough enough, but life as a widow or a widower is even tougher. And so if you are one, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, if you are here and you are looking for some more support and you would like to know where you can get that and you're not already a member of our Facebook group, please join. The link is in the description below. You can just look for Facebook groups under One Happy Widow, and that's us. It's an awesome group to join. Also, if you are in that valley of grief and you've kind of already passed through the fresh grief phase and you're trying to figure out how to put one foot in front of the other and just learn how to live this new life that you have without your spouse, but you're not really sure what to do, you can go to my course, griefpivotcourse.com. It's always open, and it's just meant for you to figure out how to pivot from grief to growth. How to move into that, what we call the new normal, which I hate that term, but it is what it is. And there's some other resources down below in the description. There's some free journal pages that you can get from my website. There's a free widow checklist if you're freshly widowed and you're really not sure who to call and who to contact. There's a free contact list that you can find, and I have all those links in the description below. If you don't want to miss another video and you want to be sure that you're notified every time a new video comes out, then subscribe and click that bell below, and you'll be alerted every time a new video comes out. So, nice to meet you if you're new here. Thank you so much for joining me on this video quest, I guess, and or on this journey, on this grief journey with me, because I'm still on it and will always be. And that's going to do it for this week. Next week, I'll talk about how I went from being widowed to moving forward, um, and how my life changed from then on, how I remarried and I married a fellow widower, how this channel came about and how that got started, and then where we are today. So, thank you so much for joining me this week, and I hope that you were able to relate to some of the things that I've talked about today. If so, go ahead and comment below, and I guess we will see you next week. Thanks for watching. Bye.